Welcome back, it's your lousy Florida traveler. In Springhill Cemetery here in my local hometown. This cemetery is predominantly a black cemetery. A lot of history here. According to locals, this cemetery once contained a church in it also. It's broke up in two parts on each side of the road. It's located here off of Green Street and Ellison Road. Now, according to old timers, and also according to some information in a book, the book entitled African American Sites by Kevin McCarthy, this was also one of the spots where this church stood, where a lot of the racial violence spilled over in the 1920s. If you're familiar with the Rosewood Massacre, there's several different events that went on here in North Florida that trickled over into these small towns. And from December 1922 right on through up through 23, especially in January and February. According to information that's been told by the local old timers and in that book, in January of 1923, the church that was here was burnt down. Later on, it was moved to another section. We'll go have a look at that. I thought we'd walk through here. There's several of our local boys here that were killed in service during the Vietnam conflict, Korean conflict, so we do have some war heroes here. Men that gave their lives and lost their lives. There should be a couple of early educators here. At the same time, in the Springhill community, there was a school that was relative for the black children of the area that was also burnt down during that by the Ku Klux Klan. So let's select out through to here and see what we can see in this cemetery, see how many of our early citizens are buried here. Some of these later on, Jerkins was built to replace the first two schools that were built. And there were some educators, some really well-educated educators who we may can find in this cemetery. I got on findagraves.com. I do a lot of work on there, get a lot of information off there. And there's not a lot of these graves recorded, so I'm looking to change that and get some of these recorded in there so that future generations doing history on our local area will have access to that without actually having to come out and walk through the cemetery. So let's go check it out and see who all we can find in here. Here in this section of the cemetery, we have several military stones. Let's take a look at them. We'll talk about them a little bit. Mr. Jimmy Rollins.
Rawlings was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division. He was killed on April 9, 1966 in Vietnam. By mortar fire, he was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star. Jimmy was 18 years old.
Horace McKelvin Jr.
Mr. McElvin served during World War II.
And then we spin around. I see one there. It's going to be military. There's another one here. Clark Reeves, World War II. I believe underneath that bush branch over there is another one. That's been there a while. Pliny Griffin.
Mr. Griffin served in World War II.
Come over to this section. I see another one sticking up over there. Military. Willie Robinson, World War I. Today we're just hunting military. Later on we're gonna come back and hunt some of the other people to do some research on. See a lot of military graves out here. Can't make that one out.
There's one over there.
As you can see, this old part of the cemetery. I was hoping that we could find remnants to tell us where the old church might have been. Isam J. Goodwine, Vietnam, 1969.
Mr. Goodwin died in Vietnam. He was 21 years old.
Right behind it, Harry Gant. There's another one up there. We'll slip up there in a minute. I see one back here, hidden away. Some of these are really old. Well, we can't see that, and I didn't bring a machete today, so. We'll have to look at it another time. Now, according to the history that I've been told, in the aftermath of the burnings, most of the people that lived around this area left. They were in fear of their lives and further retribution, so they moved on. I'm sure years later, a lot of them come back. Here's a Norman Watkins.
Mr. Watkins served in World War II.
Died in 1990. I think that's one we missed up there. Olin Jesse Flowers. Once you learn the style of them headstones, they're pretty easy to spot across. And that don't mean that some of these other people aren't service people. They just don't have the headstone. Thomas Acre, World War II. I mean, we're at the back of this old cemetery now, and there's a lot more over that hill that you can't see from here than the other sections across the road. So it'll take us several trips here. But today, we just kind of getting a glance over the cemetery. Old Joe Louis White, come across old Joe. I think everybody in Perry knows who Joe Louis White was.
Joe was a professional boxer in the heavyweight division. His debut fight was on January 19, 1962, and his last career fight was in 1966.
Isaac Anderson, no better known as Big Rig. About all my age group and older know him. Kind of neat. You look there in the center of this area, you can see the crosses, like they're marking out something. So far, I hadn't seen no clear sign evidence of where the church may have been located, though. Green Street is to our right, and Ellison Road is straight ahead, just for orientation. Come to the back of the cemetery here, there's a big old patch of bamboo. For all I know, the church may have set off to the edge of this cemetery. I just don't know. There's a big patch of bamboo right there. And then you come down about 30, 40 feet, here's another big patch of bamboo. This is those four I pointed out earlier. It's all the same right through here. And they do have stuff on them, but it's not legible. Can't read it. Not really sure about this section, but it looks like it's been kind of stood out from the rest. You can see where brick and blocks been stacked around it. It's got some flags. So I'm sure these graves are something of significance. Try to look that up. So now we're approaching Ellison Gamble. You can see there's a creek on the side. And that's Ellison Gamble Road. The other part of the cemetery is over across Green Street. This is a really good viewpoint here of the cemetery. This is the old Springhill. The church would have stood somewhere here. And then across Green Street is the new Springhill. That pretty much concludes us for today. We'll be back to look up some history on several of these other people. Today we mainly centered on military. I couldn't find any evident sign of where the church may have been, unless those bamboos mark a clue. You know, the two clumps of bamboos we've seen. I'm just curious, if any of y'all know or heard the old timers say, I appreciate you. Let me know, where was the church here at Springhill Cemetery?
The church was rebuilt in 1925, at the corner of Pinecrest and Myrtle Streets. The original bell was set in the belfry of the new church,